Yeah, I'd like to say a few things about the Olympics and the hate that women are facing. Number one, where's the apology, Elon and JK? I'm so glad I never read Harry Potter. But before I do, I know many of you won't agree with me. In fact, the majority of Americans don't agree with me, and that's okay. But if you traffic in transphobia in the comments, I'm booting you. The attacks on cis women in the Olympics is about misogyny, but also transphobia. And we have to tackle both if we want to actually crush the patriarchy like our vision board says. First off, let's dispel that this is at all about women's sports. It's just not. It's 9 times out of 10 cis men who are the ones freaking out, and they don't watch women's sports. They don't care about women's sports. In fact, in their heart of hearts, they don't think that women should be boxing or playing rugby in the first place. Usually, they're frustrated athletes themselves and they have delusions of grandeur or transgender. This is all a tactic for them to be anti-trans. Just because their bodies don't conform to some traditional feminine stereotype because they're fucking rugby players and boxers. And it's kind of ballsy to do that with women who could kick your ass. Mostly the hysteria is based on transphobia and the idea that somehow trans people are everywhere. They're just lying in wait, waiting for us to let them play in the Olympics, and then they'll become Olympic athletes. Because when you're born a man, you're practically an Olympian, and then they'll win, and they'll win gold, and we'll have been had by a trans woman just like Dave Chappelle. Oops. It's the same BS with the bathroom hysteria, the idea that trans women have only transitioned in some sort of long con to spy on us, dumping our diva cups out. Here's my thing about trans people in professional sports. I believe they should be allowed to play. And yet, they're already being barred from playing. So it's an utter fantasy that the Olympics are somehow replete with secret trans athletes. No, a couple have already been barred. Look, the Olympics defers to different sports federations around the world to determine a player's eligibility. However, they do have some guidelines. And one of those guidelines, for example, is that a trans person must have transitioned by the age of 12 in order to compete, which is a real fun head fuck if you're thinking about gender-affirming care for minors in this country. But it's often hands-off with a lot of these federations, like World Athletics, which governs track and field, that straight up banned trans athletes last year. The bottom line is this: anyone making this out to be a scourge of trans athletes is lying to you. Trans or non-binary people make up 0.06 to at most 3% of the world's population, and Olympians are 0.000017% of the world's population, or 1 in 500,000 people, and one of them ain't you, commenter. Still, again, I believe trans people should participate in all sports at all levels, because once we start drawing lines and delineating where certain people can participate and in what capacity, it becomes a slippery slope. And as we see, everyone becomes the genital police, scouring for Adam's apples like some QAnon sleuths. Queeranon, we'll call them. If we say trans people can't participate in one aspect of life, what is to prevent us from barring them from other aspects of life? It might be sports today, but tomorrow it could be education or medicine or housing. It is already legal to discriminate against LGBTQ people thanks to the Supreme Court. And as a feminist, but not a TERF, to me, cis women's response to anyone who might think that we are trans should be less shock and anger and more solidarity. That while, no, we might not be trans, there is nothing wrong with being trans or a trans athlete. That if we defend minority rights, no matter how small the group, it will lead to all of us winning gold. That was corny. Because we see the way they're dividing and conquering us. And the only answer to that is to be a fucking ally.